Shabbat Shalom, everybody. And welcome to what I know is going to be a beautiful morning. We are so excited to celebrate Sophia and all the work that she has done and the amazing addition she is going to be to our Jewish community. And so we sing some words of welcome lightly just to get us settled for the morning. We say, Hine ma tovu manayim Shevet achim gam yachad Hine ma tovu manayim Shevet achim gam yachad. That means how wonderful it is that we are all here together. And it is true, we are very happy and pleased that we are able to find a way to be together, even with some of the oddities of what we see this morning. So we appreciate that you are all wearing your masks, and we ask that those stay on for the duration of the ceremony, and that we are practicing social distancing as much as we can as we move through the ceremony this morning, and that many of our friends and family this morning are watching on our stream. So wave to them. Good morning and Shabbat Shalom. And we say again, Hine ma tovu manayim Shevet achim gam yachad Hine ma tovu manayim Shevet achim gam yachad. So we begin our service this morning moving right into the power of Torah. You see on the table in front of us, we have a Torah scroll, which represents a lot of what we are going to do this morning, the power of passing tradition down from one generation to another, the power of encountering ancient text and ancient tradition and learning from it and struggling with it and grappling with it and using it to shape our lives. So at this time, to begin the service, I am going to call Sophia's grandparents, parents, and even her brother to come and participate in our chain of tradition. So Roxanne German and Betsy and Sir Paul Edwards, Lynn and Jonathan Edwards, Oliver Edwards, and Sophia Edwards. So I'm going to ask everybody to come stand under the tent. Sophia is going to stay right where she is, but maybe just take a step toward the trees.
Any order?
Beautiful. I'm going to ask grandparents be closest to this tree. Parents be closest to Sophia, and Oliver, you're going to go on the other side of Sophia. Hang out right there, okay? Okay. I would say I need you to smile, but I actually can't tell if you're smiling or not under the mask. Beautiful, really, really beautiful job. And I am going to uncover our Torah for the morning and lift it. Okay. And stand right here. Good. So, I hold in my arms this Torah scroll. And this Torah scroll represents thousands of years of Jewish tradition, thousands of years of Jewish history, and thousands of years of guidance and values that come from this text. We use Torah to represent our transition into becoming a Jewish adult, because for thousands of years, Torah has been the backbone of the Jewish faith. And Sophia, you, in just a few minutes, will teach us brilliantly and beautifully about your Torah portion. But at this moment, we stand here with Torah, awed by the power of it, guided by the beauty of it, and sometimes even reminded of the difficulty that comes with being aligned with Torah and being a part of the Jewish people. And we stand here with this Torah scroll, and we think about all that it represents, all of the teachings and the values that have come before you in your family, that this chain of tradition that you see here extends so far in this direction to so many people who have loved and lived and encountered Torah in their lives, and someday in the future will extend very far that way. as part of what it means for you to embrace this tradition and continue it in your family. And so on this morning, I ask that each of your grandparents and your parents read a blessing for you as we pass down this Torah and this tradition. So I'm going to ask you to come right to the mic. Perfect.
Our hearts are one on this joyous day as you commit yourself to a life of Torah, a life, we pray, filled with wisdom, caring, and right action.
We pray that you will grow each day in compassion for the needy, in concern for the stranger, in love of all people.
May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob and Rachel and Leah, bless you on your becoming the name Mitzvah.
May you grow with strength and courage, with vision and sensitivity, and may you always be certain of our love. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. And so, Sophia, I am going to very gently, Oliver, I'm going to ask you to step towards your parents. And Sophia's going to come out from behind the trees. I'm going to hand you this Torah. God, it's beautiful. Just walk and put it on the table. Beautiful job, everyone. Thank you so much. I'm going to ask you to return to your seats. And we are going to prepare to read from our scroll. So as I unwrap our Sefer Torah, and before Sophia gives an introduction to her actual Torah portion, just a few more words about the Torah itself. So you see here, in a moment when I take off the mantle, that the Torah is made from 2 poles of wood and actual parchment. Inside the scroll, there are letters that are written with ink made from plants. And I point this out because every part of a Torah scroll comes from the earth, comes from nature. No part of the Torah is synthetic. It is a reminder of all that we gain from God's creation of the world, and that it is our responsibility to use those resources responsibly and beautifully as we move forward in the world. Now, one of the other things that you might notice as you come up and say a blessing, or can even see from here what the Torah, what the letters look like, is that the letters are a little bit fancy. It looks like elaborately calligraphed script. And that's true, that while Hebrew is written in block letters mostly, in the Torah itself, there are decorations. And that is also part of a commandment we have called Hidur Mitzvah, which means we are commanded to make things that are important beautiful. That is one of the values of our tradition. The other thing that I'm going to mention is that Sophia has been studying for a long time for this moment. And one of the reasons that she's been studying for a long time is because the language of Hebrew works in a little bit differently from English. There are consonants and vowels. And in Hebrew, the consonants are the backbone of the language, and the vowels are written above and below the block letters. That's how you read Hebrew. Except that in the Torah, there are no vowels. It is just the consonants. And there is no punctuation. It is just the consonants and spaces. And so that is one of the reasons that anyone who learns to read from a Torah scroll takes some time to understand and learn and let it seep into your memory. It is not written that way purely to torture all of our 13-year-olds, although that is an added benefit to the Torah system. But no, it is a reflection of ancient practice of writing that we continue on this day as we connect to our ancient heritage and connect to the past through this very important ritual. And so we hope that given how beautifully Sophia sings and how beautifully she has studied and learned, that this will be the first time of many times that Sophia will read from the Torah, not only her own Torah portion that she reads today, but also many portions in the future. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sophia, who's going to tell us a little bit about what she's going to read. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
The Torah portion for this Shabbat is Shoftim from the book Deuteronomy. This Torah portion is part of a third long speech by Moses to the people of Israel before they cross the river Jordan to enter the land that God has promised them. In this section, Moses reviews the rules of appointing a king for the people of Israel. I will be chanting from chapter 17, verses 14 to chapter 18, verse 8.
Beautiful job. Thank you so much. So Sophia, we're going to switch. I'm going to take this so that I can follow along with you. And you are going to hold the Torah. Thank you. Perfect. So we are going to call a series of aliyot, a series of individuals who are going to come and bless this Torah, who represent important people in Sophia's life. And so for our first aliyah, we call your grandmother, Roxanne Nerman, to come and bless Torah. She's actually going to come that way and stand right. Are you okay? Doing you a little precarious? Can you come under without hurting yourself? There we go. Thank you, Roxanne. Whenever you're ready. Baruch Adonai Barach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher b'Karban Mikol Ha'amim Natan Lanu Et Torah Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Right at the top, all the way. There you go. You can roll the Torah actually out farther. You can shift it so that you're right in front of them. Perfect.
Ki tavo el haaretz asher Adonai Elohecha noten lach v'risha ve'hashavta ba ve'amarta asima alai melech kechol hagoyim asher savivotai som tasim alecha melech asher yibhar Adonai Elohecha bo mikarev achecha tasima alai melech lo tuchal lo te alecha ish nochri asher lo achicha hu rek lo yarbe lo susim velo yashiv et ha'am mitzrayma leman harbot sus Adonai amar lachem lo tosifu lashuv b'derech hazeh od velo yarbelo lashir velo yosur lavavo v'chesed v'zahav lo yarbelo meo.
Beautiful job. Sophia's going to read the English. Let me hand this to you so that I don't have to let go of the Torah. Put it right down. Perfect.
If after you have entered the land that the Eternal your God has assigned to you, and take possession of it and settled in it, you decide, I will set a king over me, as do all the nations about me. You shall be free to set a king over yourself, one chosen by the Eternal your God. Be sure to set a king over yourself, one of your own people. You must not set a foreigner over you who is not your own kin. Moreover, he shall not keep many horses or send people back to Egypt to add to his horses. Since the Eternal has warned you, you must not go back that way again. And you shall not have many wives, lest his heart go astray, nor shall he amass silver and gold to excess.
Beautiful job. Blessing after, Roxanne.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam v'tochenu Baruch Atah Adonai noten HaTorah.
Amen. Would you like to give a jump hug? That's beautiful. For our second aliyah, we call Timothy Edwards to come and bless Torah. And Roxanne, you can return to, why don't you come this way? Timothy, if you want to come around this way also. Yeah. All good. We'll trim the tree. So, it wants to hear Torah too. Torah is a tree of life. You ready? Oh, that's right. So Timothy is going to stand, and I am going to chant the blessing in his honor. So we say, Baruch hu et Adonai hamvarach. Together. Baruch Adonai hamvarach le'olam ba'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et toratu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Oh, okay. Yod malfunction. It's okay. There we go. Yeah, that's all right. We'll fix it later. Okay, I'm just going to move it over here. Right up there. Perfect. Go ahead.
V'chaya kashivto al kitzei mamlachto v'chatavo et mishnei haTorah hazo al sefer milifnei hakohanim haLevim v'chayta imo v'karavo kol yamei chaya leman yilman le'yira et Adonai Elohecha Lishmor et kol divrei haTorah hazo v'tachukim ha'elech la'asotam levilti umlevavo le'echad me'ech.
Good, next line.
Levilti sormim ha'mitzvah yamim usmol leman ya'arich yamim al mamlachto u'uvanav bekerev Yisrael.
Beautiful job. Loud and slow. When he is seated on his royal throne, he shall have a copy of his teaching written for him on a scroll by the Levitical priests. Let it remain with him, and let him read it in all his life, so that he may learn to revere the Eternal his God, to observe faithfully every word of his teaching, as well as these laws. Thus he will not act hotly towards his fellows, or deviate from the instruction to the right or to the left, to the end that he and his descendants may reign long in the midst of Israel. Beautiful job. And we chant the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu torat emet v'chayei olam nata betochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen. You can hug your uncle. Very, very nice. Thank you, Timothy and Mazel Tov. For our third aliyah, we call Sophia's parents, Lynn and Jonathan, joined by Oliver, who's going to come and be proud of his sister. Because I said so.
Yes, thank you.
No problem. Okay, guys, go. Baruch Adonai Hamvarach le'olam ba'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach le'olam ba'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Lo yishel hakohanim haLevim ki yoshevet Levi helech v'nachala im Yisrael ishe Adonai v'nachalato yochelu v'nachala lo yihelo bekerev echav Adonai hu nachalato asher diber lo. V'zeh yihyeh mishpat hakohanim me'etam me'et zochei hazeva im shoiseh v'natan lakohem hazerua v'chalachayim ve'okeva reshit deganha tirosha ve'izorecha ve'reshit gesonha titen lo kivo bachar Adonai Elohecha mikol shavatecha leman Nasharei b'shem Adonai u'uvenav kol hayamim.
Beautiful job. Let's read English. Really good.
The Levitical priests, the whole tribe of Levi, shall have no territorial portion with Israel. They shall live only off the Eternal's offering by fire as their portion, and shall have no portion among their brother tribes. The Eternal is their portion, as promised. This then shall be the priest's due from the people. Everyone who offers a sacrifice, whether an ox or a sheep, must give the shoulder, the cheeks, and the stomach to the priest. You shall also give him the first fruits of your new grain and wine and oil, and the first shearing of your sheep. For the Eternal your God has chosen him, his descendants, out of all your tribes to be in attendance for service in the name of the Eternal for all time.
Great job. Blessing after.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai, notei haTorah.
Amen. Hugs to your parents and maybe even your brother. You guys can actually stay right here. Sophia's going to hold the Torah open. This side is going to stay. We're going to take a brief pause in our reading of the Torah. We talked a lot about the power of Torah before, and one of the things that we also know is that the Torah helps remind us of some of the more important things that are going on in our lives. That it is a way that we prioritize and reflect on moments that we are experiencing. And one of the ways that we show that is by saying a prayer for healing with the Torah open in front of us. And so at this time, both in our service and at this moment in history, when we know that the world itself is in desperate need of healing and help and strength and comfort, we pause to say a prayer for healing. And in the middle of the verses of this prayer, we will give everyone here an opportunity to think about those in your own life who are in need of healing. And if you are watching our stream this morning, if there are names that you would like to type into the comments, to pray for healing all together on this day. And so we sing. Mi sheberach avoteinu mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. On this Shabbat, we pray for Sarah Watusin and Banks Edwards and these congregants, loved ones, and friends. Baruch atah Adonai, Makor harefuah, blessed are you Adonai, source of healing. Misheberach Imoteinu Mekor Abracha Lavoteinu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shalema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. And now, it is my privilege and pleasure to call officially, for the first time, as a bat mitzvah to the Torah, Sophia Lee Edwards, who comes and brings with her the Hebrew name of Tamod Habachura Bat Mitzvah Shayalea Baliba Ve'Yonatan La'aliyah Torah. Okay, Torah blessing, loud and proud. Ready? Go ahead.
Baruch hu et Adonai Hamorah.
Baruch Adonai Yambarach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'Torah.
Amen.
V'chiyavo halevi me'achad she'aracha mikol Yisrael asher hu gamar sham v'adonai uva bechol avat nafsho al hamakom asher yivhar Adonai v'sherei v'shem Adonai Elohav kechol ehav halavim hazerah ha'omdim sham lifnei Adonai helech kechelech yochelu levad mi'karav al ha'avot.
Beautiful job. Right next to you, so you can be ready to know.
If a Levite would go from any of the settlements throughout Israel where he has been residing to the place that the Eternal has chosen, he may do so whenever he pleases. He may serve in the name of the Eternal his God, like his fellow Levites who are there in attendance before the Eternal. They shall receive equal shares of the dues without regard to personal gifts or patrimonies.
Beautiful job. Blessing after. Mom has it right there. Perfect.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'Torah.
Amen. And now we say, Siman Tov u'Mazel Tov u'Mazel Tov and Siman Tov u'Mazel Tov and Mazel Tov and Siman Tov u'Mazel Tov and Mazel Tov and Siman Tov. Yeilanu. Hug your parents. Here we go. Yeilanu, Yeilanu, u'lecho Yisrael. Yeilanu, Yeilanu, u'lecho Yisrael. So we're going to give virtual high fives and hugs. Virtual high fives and hugs to everybody watching on the stream and everybody who's out over here. Beautiful, beautiful job. So I'm going to ask Lynn and Jonathan to take their seats. And Sophie's going to hang out here for one moment while we put the Torah away. And as I am doing that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Haftarah, which is what comes next. And the Haftarah, which Sophia will introduce in just a moment, let me put this here for you. Many, many years ago, and actually at many moments throughout Jewish history, the practice of reading Torah has not been safe. The Jews have lived in many different lands under many different governments, and there was fear in a lot of areas that the Jews as a people, using the teachings of the Torah, would rise up against the majority population. And so at many moments, there is evidence that reading Torah was prohibited in the Jewish community. And so in response to that, the leaders of the Jewish community took a look at the entirety of the Jewish textual tradition, that our Bible contains not only Torah, which is the first part, but also a book of prophets. And in those prophets are ethical and moral teachings that help guide us to this day. And they looked through that book and they picked sections for every section of the Torah that connected thematically. And so for each Shabbat, we have not only an assigned piece of the Torah, but an assigned piece of the prophets that connects to the ideas and themes that are being read on this Shabbat. And so for many years, when we could not read Torah itself, we read Haftarah instead. And today, and in communities across the Jewish world, still to this day, we continue this practice as another example of a link to our past and to our history and to an ancient tradition which still bears tremendous relevance today in terms of its teachings. And to tell us a little bit more about that, Sophia is going to read her Haftarah introduction.
The Haftarah for this Shabbat is the fourth of 7 Haftarot of consolation that are read in the weeks between Tisha B'Av, the traditional fast day commemorating the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, and Rosh Hashanah. Each of these 7 Haftarot, which come from the book of Isaiah, consist of reassuring messages from God to the people of Israel who have been exiled to Babylonia. Isaiah tells the people to not fear and to have hope, for God has remembered them and will soon return them to their land. I will be chanting Isaiah chapter 51, verses 12 through 16.
Beautiful job. We're going to start with the blessing before.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nviim tovim v'ratza v'divrechem hane'emarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'torah u'Moshe abdo u'Yisrael imo u'v'nviei ha'emet v'tzedek. Anochi, Anochi, hu menachem me'at v'tiri me'anov shamut umi ben Adam hatzir yinaten v'tichach Adonai asecha notecha shamayim ve'osed aretz v'tefahei tamid kol hayom mipnei hamad hamitzik ka'asher konen v'shiticha va'ayeh hametzik mecher so'eh v'hipateach v'lo yamut lashachat v'lo yachzar lachmo v'anochi Adonai Elohecha roga hayam v'yechemu gala Adonai Seva'ot Shemo va'asim devarai beficha uvatzel yadi kisiticha linto hashamayim velisod aretz velemor letzion ami ata. Okay. I am the one who confronts you. What is wrong with you? That you are afraid of mortals, of humans being who become like grass, that you forget the eternal your maker, who spread out the heavens and established the earth. All day long you are in terror of the fury of an oppressor, intent on your destruction. Yet where is the oppressor's fury? Neither death nor the grave, for you who bend low, you shall be free and lacking nothing. For I am the eternal your God. I stir up the sea and make its waves roar. God of heavens, hosts by name, I have put my words in your mouth and sheltered you with my hand. I spread out the heavens and established the earth. I say to Zion, you are my people. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, sor kol haolamim, tzadik bechol hadorot, ha'el ha'ne'eman, ha'omer ve'oseh, hamdaber u'mkayem, shekol devarav emet v'tzedek, al ha'torah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al ha'nevi'im ve'al yom ha'shabbat hazeh, shenetat lanu Adonai Eloheinu, anachnu modim lach. Umvarchim utav, yitbarach shimha, befi kol hai, tamid le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh hashabbat.
Amen. Wonderful job. So we are going to transition now into Devar Torah. Sophia, I think that's in your binder. And Devar Torah, as I mentioned at the beginning of the service, is really the essence of becoming bat mitzvah. It is this idea that we take on the responsibility of Torah. And so in just a moment, Sophia is going to teach us a little bit about her Torah portion.
Okay. Hi, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Let's try that one more time.
Okay.
Sorry.
Hi, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Okay.
My Torah portion, Shoftim, is Shoftim. It is found in the book of Deuteronomy. My Torah portion takes place after the Jewish people have finished wandering the desert and Moses is listing off laws and rules they must follow. This section of the Torah talks about how the people of Israel should choose their king. We are given the rules for selecting a king and also the rules for what the king must do to fulfill his obligations. We're taught about the requirements one must meet in order to be king, both in his lineage and in his behavior. The two rules that stuck out to me are, 1, the king must be one of our own people, and 2, the king must not act like he is above the law. This reminds me of the rules in the United States, where the president must also be one in the United States, and they must not act like they are above the law. My interpretation of this text is that the kings in the text are a lot like the presidents of the United States, because they must be from the U.S. and kings must be from the land they are ruling. This is an important rule because if they are not, they could make decisions that are not helpful because they don't care about the place they are ruling as much as somebody who is born in the land they are in charge of. When we expect our president to follow the law of the land, it is sending a message that no one, not even the person in the highest position of power, is above the law. That teaches us that everyone has to follow the rules, even those in charge, which is a very valuable example to set. I chose to talk about this piece of the text because it feels relevant to me and to all of us. as we prepare for a presidential election later this year. We've all spent a lot of time thinking about what makes a person qualified to be the President of the United States, and we hope that they will be someone with our country's best interests in mind, and who respects and adheres the laws of the land. The Jewish value that I have chosen is Sahar Ba'alei Chaim, the pain of living creatures, a set of laws prohibiting cruelty to animals and obligating us to acts of compassion and proper treatment of animals used to perform labor. Just like presidents and kings have responsibility for their people, people have responsibility for animals. We, like the rulers of countries, must take responsibility to those who look to us to take care of them. This means treating all animals like people. Don't harm or abuse them, and treat them like you would want to be treated if you were them. And with animals that perform labor, we don't want to overwork them. This is mainly talking about cows, oxen, and herding dogs. The Torah is saying not to abuse their strength and to make them do more than they can actually do. I chose this value because my mitzvah project is fostering dogs. In my family, we had the opportunity to start fostering in May. Our first foster was 4 puppies, and we love them very much. They were all adopted pretty quickly. Our second foster dog was Max, who acted like a puppy, but actually weighed about 100 pounds. These fosters came from different organizations, but the one I have chosen to donate to is 2 Blondes, all breeds. They are a nonprofit organization in the Denver metro area that rescues dogs from overpopulated high-kill shelters. As humans, we are in a position of power when it comes to helping animals find homes, and it is our responsibility to make sure they have safe families to live with. If you would like to join me in supporting this organization, I invite you to think about fostering a dog yourself, or you can always contribute in other ways. I'm happy to put you in touch with this amazing organization if you would like to give. There are many people that I would like to thank for helping me out. First, my parents. I would like to thank my mom for being such a good example for me. She is the hardest worker I know and never gives up. And I would like to thank my dad for keeping us all on track and taking so many sacrifices for our family, including doing the dishes. And thank you to my brother for helping me practice, or at least staying out of my way and being quiet, and for taking the easier trail down the mountain when we were skiing. And thanks to Cantor for helping me out when I was stressed, and thank you for being a great teacher. And Rabbi Hyatt for helping me write my speech, which is what I was definitely the most afraid of doing. My tutor Liza for helping me with my Hebrew speech, especially my Aliyah and Haftorah, even when I was struggling with a lot of words, even after I had been practicing all week. And I would like to thank everyone who showed up here in person, especially those of you who came and drove up here and flew and risked getting sick to come. And I'd like to thank all of you who are here on Facebook Live and on the call for watching me and being here. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, shehachianu b'kiyamanu v'hiyanu lazman hazeh. Praise to you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, for giving us life, for sustaining us, and for enabling us to reach this season. Amen.
Amen. So at this time, I'm going to call. There we go. At this time, I'm going to call Lynn and Jonathan to come and bless Sophia and all the amazing things that she has done. And Sophia, you have to listen to them. So you guys are going to, we're going to switch. So here you can, you can stand right on the other side of the table and look at your parents and cheat out a little bit. There we go.
All right.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm not going to embarrass you, I promise. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Okay, so I wrote this letter during quarantine when I was a little bit tired and sad and angry and all the mixed emotions, right? And then I went back to it and I was like, you know what, it works. So here we are. My letter to Sophia on becoming a bat mitzvah. I wanted to start with a quote I read during quarantine when I read a really long, difficult book called A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihira. We all say we want our kids to be happy, only happy and healthy, but we don't want that. We want them to be like we are, or better than we are. We as humans are very unimaginative in that sense. We aren't equipped for the possibility that they might be worse. But I guess that would be asking too much. It must be an evolutionary stopgap. If we were all so specifically, vividly aware of what might go horribly wrong, we would none of us have children at all. And so this book was totally random. It was left in the kitchen at my office for free, and I picked it up. And the job ended pretty soon after, and the world shut down with COVID. It's a pretty profound book that will stick with me for a long time. It chronicles the life of a severely damaged person and his life from birth until death. And it's a stunning portrait of a life in all its details, friendships, love, and loss. It really brought home how your upbringing in life will shape what you become. The experiences that you go through early in your life will shape who you are at your core. What you believe in, who you trust, what is right and wrong, your ethos that will be molded into you by your experiences. The guidance that your parents, your community, your friends, your school, your Jewish faith will give you along your path will ultimately be your tools to help you navigate life, career, and the bigger world. Right now, as you're becoming a young woman, becoming a bat mitzvah is one milestone along the path of your life. And I hope you feel a sense of accomplishment today in how hard you worked to get here. You had a tremendous amount of discipline studying your Torah portion with Cantor and your tutor throughout the year, and more specifically through quarantine. You were the one who always reminded me that it was time for your Zoom calls. 2020 has been such a strange year for you, awash in accomplishments, but also disappointments. And these are not just your disappointments, but the whole world. You know, starting in March, we watched as people started getting afflicted with a strange illness that was highly contagious. We watched from afar as the world quickly began to shut down. It seemed like it was a foreign affliction, biblical almost, in its wrath and severity. We watched as it came to the USA. We watched as schools got shut down, then soccer, then music class, and then synagogue. And then all of the outdoor things we like to do, like skiing and hiking and even being social with your friends, it all went away. Summer camp at Schwader was canceled. And then we felt like we reached the end of our COVID-19 tolerance, you know, the kids' worlds became very small. Just became our little family of four. And while some people really took this time to focus and do meaningful work, I think we all felt a little bit lost at home. I lost my job. Dad was working way more than usual, you know, but we found a daily rhythm and we found things that we could all get together on. Roblox for you and Oliver, baking for you and me, your Torah study and online school, crafting and painting for Sophia. She grew lots of seeds, starting from a science experiment, and then we ended up building an entire vegetable patch. Going back and forth to the Cherry Creek Dog Park with our dog, you know, and slowly we're gaining traction and living a life a bit more normally now. School's going to be starting soon. We all got on an airplane to go see Grandma in Florida, and we're all healthy, happy, and here to support you. And I think that COVID-19 will be a life-altering event, not just in 2020, but in years to come for your life. You will know what's inside you and your perseverance and not get lost. You know you have the strength. You know that your family loves you and supports you no matter what. You know that you're so self-sufficient that you can cook breakfast, lunch, and dinner, that you can not only survive, but you can thrive in any environment. And even with all the technology around us, it doesn't replace real friendship. No young woman is an island, but isn't it nice to know that you have this baseline of skills that you can fall back on and grow with? Everything you learn from here on out just adds to your toolbox and helps you grow into a multi-limbed tree of knowledge. And while parents like to steer their kids towards a certain passion, a degree, a path, you've made it abundantly clear that you like to choose your own. All we can do is give you the tools, the baseline, the structure, the opportunities, and everything else is going to fall into place. Even if it means disappointment and failure, you're going to make every one of them your own. They're not mine, They're not Daddy's. They're not Oliver's. They're yours. You're going to make your path, and you're going to flower and blossom wherever the world takes you. And Grandpa Aaron is smiling on you from heaven today.
I'm smiling, but nobody can tell.
I'm crying.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So Lynn gave me a sneak peek at her letter to Sophia, and that kind of inspired me to offer, I guess, a bookend to that. So Mom's talk, her letter to you focused on how kind of COVID altered our lives and tested us in unusual ways, to say the least, and how you rose to meet those challenges. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the social justice movement that was kind of part of that time frame, counterpart to the lockdown. So it gained visibility across the country and here in Denver during that same time. Not only do we have safer at home orders and social distancing guidelines to contend with, but for several weeks this summer we witnessed marches, demonstrations, riots, fires, as we found, as a country we're kind of forced to reckon with what was legal versus what was just, what was permitted, but could no longer be allowed. To quote from Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from Birmingham jail, "Any law that uplifts human personality is just. Any law that degrades human personality is unjust." So during this time, we were asked by fellow Americans, friends, and family to consider whether we were lifting up or whether we were degrading. Sophia, you have always been strong-willed and independent, traits that, though sometimes frustrating as a parent, I know will serve you well as you grow, mature, and become your own woman. Part of this strong will has been your sense of right and wrong. That is a really strict interpretation of what the rules say are okay and not okay. You have a very legalistic turn of mind as you parse rules to determine what is right and what is wrong. On more than one occasion, this has caused tension with adults, teachers in particular, and on others, your peers, your friends. Now, as you reflect on your Torah portion, in particular, on how to choose a leader and those qualities that a leader exhibits, and the Torah as a whole, especially in the context of the continuing social justice movement which we're talking about, I'd like to offer you a challenge to keep in mind and in your heart that it isn't sufficient to engage with the world just in terms of right and wrong, legal and illegal, but rather in terms of just and unjust, or, if you prefer, moral and immoral. For you can have unjust law where what is illegal is moral and what is legal is immoral. This isn't an easy task, and it's not something you're going to be able to do overnight or study for, but I know that you can achieve it, as with any other thing that you've put your mind to, whether that's cooking, painting, acting, singing. It just takes practice, where you'll learn from your mistakes. But let's consider this distinction with a few examples from history, which show humanity's continued struggle with enacting just law, and in many cases struggling against those which are unjust. So 2,500 years ago, in the Ketuvim from the book of Daniel, we have the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who refused to obey the laws of Nebuchadnezzar, right, on the grounds that there was a higher moral law at stake. For their trouble, they were put into a fiery furnace, although they weren't consumed by the flames. 244 years ago, in our own Declaration of Independence, the founders of our nation made the following treasonous but entirely just statement: that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive to those ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and institute a new government, as you were discussing in your portion today. 57 years ago, Sitting in a jail for civil disobedience, Dr. King reflected on events in his own lifetime as he fought for the further realization of the spirit embodied in our Declaration of Independence during the Civil Rights Movement. To quote him, "We should never forget that everything Adolf Hitler did in Germany was legal, and everything the Hungarian freedom fighters did in Hungary was illegal. It was illegal to aid and comfort a Jew in Hitler's Germany. Even so, I am sure that had I lived in Germany at the time, I would have aided and comforted my Jewish brothers." So I challenge you to keep the difference between legal and just in mind, implying perhaps that you aren't thinking about this already. But then again, you have already shown a maturity that surprised me. Back in June, you encouraged our family to attend the Student March for Social Justice led by Tay Anderson, where I was hesitant and afraid of COVID, of legal trouble, of violence. You showed courage in joining the march and convincing me to go too, but it was the just and moral thing to do in spite of the risks. I love you so much, and I am incredibly proud of you for so many reasons: creativity, intelligence, athleticism, your love of animals, and practical jokes. I see you building skills on which you will rely as you grow into a compassionate adult contributing to society. But as you grow, continue to consider the context of a situation, letting wisdom that you have already begun to receive from the Torah inform your judgments, large and small, that you may always lift others up. Oh, and don't be afraid to read a book now and then.
Yes.
Sophia, just a couple more. You ready? Actually, just one more. So for this one, I'm going to switch so that I don't feed back with you. It's on. So I'm not quite sure. I will be very loud.
Oop.
1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, so now we're going to switch again.
Fascinating.
Sophia, we have traveled through a long journey to arrive at this moment. We have a regular course of study for what it means to become a bar or bat mitzvah, and you started in the regular way. But I think based on so much of what your parents spoke about so beautifully, for many of us, it feels like we have come much farther than the number of months that we have been engaged in this process. I just want to thank you at the beginning for being a very steady presence in this time. And I know that there were moments where becoming a bat mitzvah and learning this material felt overwhelming and scary in the middle of all of this. And I just want to say to you that I am so impressed that you shared that with me. That every one of us faces processes and expectations that can seem insurmountable, that don't feel like we have the strength or the resilience or even the skills or the ability to do it yet. And often we respond to that by denial or running away. And you really said, I want to talk about it a little bit more. And I cannot tell you how mature that is, how self-aware that is, and that most students don't have the strength to know they need that conversation at this moment in their lives. So thank you for that. You chanted and taught us so beautifully today. That strength that your parents talked about was very evident in everything that you brought here this morning. Your Torah portion is very famous. It is a portion that, particularly for the Reform movement, grounds our worldview, that justice can and must be part of who we are as a Jewish community. And when the rules in your Torah portion were written, the Torah was preoccupied with creating a society out of the ancient Israelite community. They were trying, the laws that were given to us, they were trying to help us understand how should we be? How should we exist in this world? And it would have been very easy to get lost in little details of how we negotiate this, or how, what does it mean to sell each other's property? And there's plenty of that in the Torah, for sure. But at this moment in Deuteronomy, the Torah teaches us that there are fundamental truths that we must connect to. And it is so clear that from your family and because of who you are, that you already know that. The very beginning of your Torah portion has 3 words: tzedek, tzedek, tirdof. Justice, justice must you pursue. There are lots of different interpretations of what that means. Why are there 2 tzedeks? Why 2 justices? How come not just one justice? And one of the interpretations I want to give to you on this morning is that there is inner justice and a sense of inner peace and what we need for ourselves in this world. And then there's the world justice. And you saw both collide in this period leading up to becoming a bat mitzvah. And as overwhelming as that might have been, I hope you feel someday that it was actually quite lucky for you that you had this opportunity to see how the rules and the wisdom of your Torah connects to the world for real and for true. And that is one of the reasons that the Jewish tradition has continued in the way that it has. But Sophia, your resilience and your awareness and your sense of how we should be in this world is hopefully going to be what enables you to change the world through your faith and through all of the other teaching that you absorb and shape and form. Those 3 words, tzedek, tzedek, tirdof, is actually emblazoned on the front of this Torah. They are words that were core and dear to the Rabbi Emeritus of this congregation, Rabbi Foster, who led this congregation in justice for many, many years. And so I hope for you that when you come to services many, many times in the future, when we open this ark and you see this Torah that you read from so beautifully today, and you see those words on the front of this Torah, that you remember all of the movement and all of the journey that brought you here to this moment, and it helps inspire you wherever you are in that moment in your life to carry it forward and to continue to making the world a better place. So thank you. Thank you for who you are. Thank you for who you are becoming. And thank you for teaching and grounding us so beautifully on this day. I'm going to take one moment to share with you some gifts that the congregation will eventually have for you. We, as a community, are so proud of all of our Bar and Bat Mitzvah students, and especially of Sophia on this day, that we as a congregation gift to you a Bat Mitzvah certificate that has a verse about learning Torah and teaching Torah. We have planted a tree, very appropriately, in Israel for your becoming a Bat Mitzvah, so that you can continue to make the desert bloom and grow the world environmentally. We gift to you from our brotherhood and sisterhood a Kiddush cup and a mezuzah, so that you can always have a Jewish home wherever you are. And we give to you a Torah commentary for teens called Text Messages. And on the front inside cover, each of the clergy have written a message to you. So that will arrive at your house in a beautiful bag at some point in the near future. So at this moment, I am now going to invite your parents to come stand right behind you. I'm going to ask you to angle out just a little bit so that everyone here can see you and everyone on the stream can see you. And we are going to bless you. We take this opportunity and many opportunities at times in our lives when we stop and pause and understand that this moment is heavy and important to bless you with words from Torah. And so on this morning, when you have inspired us and taught us and steadied us with your gifts, we give you these words of blessing. Yivarechecha Adonai ve'yishmerecha. May God bless you and keep you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichuneka. May God bring light to you and grant you compassion and grace. Yisa Adonai panav elecha ve'yasem lecha shalom. Shalom. May God give you the gift of peace, of fulfillment, of happiness, and wholeness. And together we all say, Amen. Hug your parents. Thank you. So I'm going to ask Lynn and Jonathan to take their seats, and Sophia, you can actually sit right over here. We conclude our ceremony this morning with words of memory. As we always do, and as I mentioned during the chain of tradition, we take seriously that our past is connected to our present, and that the power of the tradition that comes from many generations before shapes and informs our lives. And so on this morning, as we enter into memory, we remember Aaron German, Sophia's grandfather, and all those in our minds and hearts who we remember at this moment. And so I ask you now to rise as you are able, as together we say our Kaddish prayer. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divra chirutei ve'amlich malchutei, v'chayechon uvyomechon uvchaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv ve'imru amen. Yehe shmei Rabbah mavarach le'olam u'lomei almaya. Yitbarach ve'yishtabach ve'yitba'ar v'roman ve'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudsha b'richu. La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbachata v'nechamata. Da'amiran be'alma ve'imru amen. Yehe shlama Rabbah min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. And together we say, Amen. And so we have now come to the end of our ceremony. I'm going to have Sophia come step up here one more time. We thank you for your presence here. We thank you for the joy that you bring. We thank you for the blessings that you bring to Sophia and her family as we celebrate this amazing young woman and all of the gifts she will surely bring to our Jewish community. And so we conclude this morning with one more round of Siman Tov and Mazel Tov as we wish Sophia a Mazel Tov on her bat mitzvah. Siman Tov u'Mazel Tov u'Mazel Tov and Siman Tov. Siman Tov u'Mazel Tov u'Mazel Tov and Siman Tov. Siman Tov u'Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov and Siman Tov. Yelanu, 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 U'lecho Yisrael. Yelanu, Yelanu, U'lecho Yisrael. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.